memories. I remember Tampa, the way she used to be, the places we would run to, the faces we would see. Yes, I remember Tampa, those precious memories. A city rising on the move, a simple yet progressive groove. I remember Tampa, and she remembers me. Yeah. She remembers me.
Welcome to the Tampa Native Show. Stay tuned now for the fastest 60 minutes in cable broadcast history. Live from the studios at TBCN, the home of the Tampa Native Show. Join your hosts, Mario Nunez, the 15-Minute Girl, and Steve Canella, as they celebrate growing up in Tampa. From Shock Armstrong to Shakey's Pizza, from Braddock Street to Buffalo Avenue. Get ready to call in and tell us your stories, because sharing your memories has never been this much fun. And now, Mario Nunez, the 15-Minute Girl, and Steve Canella.
She remembers me.
Hi, Tampa Native Show fans. Welcome back to this, your Thursday night 6:30 edition of the Tampa Native Show. And as always, seated alongside my broadcast partners, Steve Canella and Sally Nunez, I'm Mario Nunez, welcoming you back to this, the Tampa Native Show. How about this week, Stevie?
Oh, it's going to be amazing.
6:30 start time. We got 90 full minutes. Who's our guest this week?
You know, tonight's guest is going to be Maura Barrios.
Easy for us to say. We have
was
been
a little hard to
rehearsing
say.
that all week, and it's been.
I couldn't roll my R's.
And it's a tongue twister for sure.
It's a roll of the R's.
And we're going to be introducing Maura in just
Right.
a couple of minutes. We want to get through some other information at the top of the show, but for those of you that may know her, little introduction is necessary. For those of you that are not familiar with Miss Maura, we're going to read a little bio to kind of bring you up to speed on what she's been doing. Suffice it to say, she's a West Tampa native, a proud, very proud West Tampa native, scholarly proud West Tampa native, who's made it her life's work to research and preserve the history of West Tampa. She's employed currently at the University of South Florida. I'll read that bio to you in just a minute. So, if you've got some friends out there that are just settling in, and we know that it's 6:30 and people are just now getting home, and with traffic anymore, Stevie.
Crazy.
Maybe on the way home
Maybe
still.
on the way home
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Call them, leave them a voicemail, send them a text, and tell them to tune in, because tonight's show is going to be very, very special. 90 minutes worth, a very special edition of the Tampa Native Show. Today, in 1895, on this date, a gentleman by the name of George Herman Ruth was born. That would be Babe Ruth, huh,
The
Stevie?
Babe.
Oh, wow. The Bambino, the Sultan of SWAT. And I remember, being in Baltimore on a layover in 1995, when they were celebrating the centennial of his birth. Of course, he was from Baltimore, and we know the history of the great Babe Ruth. I mentioned that today because we're almost at baseball season. Baseball season's almost here. And there's one thing about our legacy here in Tampa and our history here in Tampa. It's very, very interwoven with the story of baseball. And Babe, of course, hit one of his most famous home runs right here in Tampa during spring training at Phillips Field, right there by the University of Tampa. So happy birthday to the Babe. You know, that's a big part of baseball history. Also today, starting out, the Florida State Fair today. And how do you know that it's Florida State Fair time? Look at the weather. That cloud, the rain, the cold.
It never fails.
And if
Never
you're a
fails.
Tampa native, you know full well that weather is something that's indicative of what happens when it's Florida State weather time. So Florida State Fair time. So get over to the fair at your first convenience. That's your plug for the Florida State Fair. We can't wait. Also today, the Winter Olympics is starting today. Now, arguably, I'm more of a Summer Olympics guy, but I got to be honest with you. There are some things that take place during the Winter Olympics that are amazing. And of course, this year with all things political and everything in sort of upheaval in Sochi, I know some people are going to be watching just to find out what's going to happen there. But that's starting tonight. So get ready to watch Bob Costas until 4 in the morning. Because,
My fave.
you know how that's going to
Really.
be. And in just a couple of minutes, we'll bring Maud on. So guys, how was your week?
Week was fantastic.
Good?
Yeah.
Mine was the same as yours.
Went
so
by
it was pretty
fast.
good,
I know, and
yeah.
I always ask that question, and it's kind of ironic because I know how the 15-minute Girls Week was, just like mine.
Yes.
Now, we can see that the phones are already ringing, and this is really, really impressive because it happened to us last week
It
as
did.
well, Steve. When we
It
talked
sure
about
did.
your first car, it was a real emotional kind of one of those shows everybody wanted
hit
to
a nerve.
share their memory. What we're going to ask you to do tonight is one thing. Hold off on your phone calls for just a little bit until we get through some of Maura's presentation. She's got a lot of stuff that we want to cover, and what you might find is that you might have a question relative to the information that she presents. So here's what we're going to ask you to do. Have a piece of paper and a pencil handy. Write down your question, and when we go to the phones in about 45 minutes, that'll be your time to call in and ask your question. You can always send us an email at any time. Steve's going to be monitoring the emails, and give him that email address, Steve.
That is going to be goodtimes@tampanativeshow.com. Good Times, here it is on the screen, at tampanativeshow.com.
Send us that email
I'll be
now.
ready.
Send us your Bolita number, because we're going to have the drawing as we always do. And if you have a specific question already in mind, Steve will be monitoring that, so when we go to the phone calls later, he'll intersperse your questions via email with the callers as well. Okay, so thank you for obliging us on that. Now, let me go ahead and read this little bio
Definitely.
quickly. You can leave us in the 3-shot back here. If you want to bring the 1-shot up, it's okay, because I'm going to be in the head down position here. So maybe leave us, there it is. All right, here's what I've got to read. And Steve, thank you so much for the 0.9 font, which is,
I couldn't find 8.
because 8 was too small.
It was too small.
Maura Barrios, it says, is a community historian who is focused on the history of West Tampa. She is a 4th-generation resident of this community. While earning her master's in Latin American history at the University of South Florida, she did research on the Tampa Cuban community and on the history of Cuba and its cigar industry. She has presented her research at the Latin American Studies Association, at FIU's Cuban Studies Conference, and at the 150th anniversary of Jose Marti's conference in La Habana. Maura has written several articles for Cigar City Magazine, Weekly Planet, and the La Tampeña column for the Las Americas Herald. She is currently working on a paper about race relations in Tampa with a case study on the Céspedes School of West Tampa, which is something very interesting, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Maura attended West Tampa schools, graduating from Jefferson. I take a little pride in that. That's the only dragon on the panel. Graduated in Jefferson, class of 1967, and traveling and living in other cities. She's returned to her, after traveling and living in other cities, she's returned to her beloved West Tampa in 1986 and lives on, ready for this? Calle Main. Can you live in any more central West Tampa than on Calle Main, which is Main Street? Yeah. She began employment at the USF in 1990, eventually becoming Associate Director of the Latin American Studies program there. Currently, she works in the History Department and is collaborating with the University of South Florida Library to create a virtual museum of West Tampa. Maura has been an activist in the anti-embargo of Cuba movement and has made several trips to Cuba. She probably knows our dear friend Al Fox as well. And without further ado, Becky, if you'll bring us up in the 4-shot, we would like to introduce to you our guest of honor this evening, Miss Maura Barrios. Maura,
welcome.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for being
so
here.
much for allowing me this time to talk about my favorite place. And I want to thank Steve for coming to my house.
Sunday, that's
and
right.
for getting all these images together. I respect people who can do technology because I am techno retarded. And
We made it work.
and
though.
I think it's an important topic that is
Absolutely.
what I call
Absolutely.
unknown history sometimes. So I really, really appreciate that. And in appreciation, I brought you a gift.
Thank you, Maura.
Although,
What do you got for
although
us?
Steve did all the work.
Yeah? Maybe we'll share
We'll
it.
share it. We'll share
But
it.
I think you're going to get the joke.
Okay.
So read, that's from USF. Somebody gave it to me today.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And for those of you that can't see this at home, I'll read it for you. It says, mess with the bulls and you get the horns, USF. And we know a little bit about this. Is a favorite West Tampa saying of ours. You mess with the bulls,
I know.
you mess with the bull and you get the horns. And you know, we talked a little bit before we went on the air tonight, and Maura shares our passion as well for a raging controversy that we hear on the Tampa Native Show Rail every week relative to, you know, sort of the, what I want to say, the diminishment of our history and the fact that if we're not very, very careful, Tampa will devolve into what has now become a phenomenon known as Tampa Bay. So,
What's that?
Maura is here. Yeah, Maura is here to settle a lot of that for us, and of course, give us that history that binds us to West Tampa. What a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, even though Ybor City may have been the epicenter of the beginning of the cigar industry, West Tampa played a very vital role in all of that. And I'm not going to steal any of Maura's thunder because this is her show tonight. So, Maura, on behalf of the Tampa Native Show, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing this wonderful information with us. We are going to now sit back, try
Get
to
educated.
try to
Now-
remain quiet. I've got my pen and paper out. I'm going to be taking notes as well.
And you know
Stephen?
what? Would we suggest in this case maybe Maura tell us a little bit about herself, maybe with the photos that we have?
I think that's
That might be a good way
appropriate.
to
I
start.
think that's
Yeah.
appropriate. So, Maura, without ado, call for your personal photographs, and then you can talk over those as well. Becky, those first 6 photographs that you have there.
Okay, well, these are some photos that show my family for the most part. My mom, Elena Alvarez, she was a singer. She sang at Ray Park, and she sang at the Royal Theater with her cousin and won prizes. And I say they were all movie stars.
They were.
Truly were. All these beautiful women
Look
from
at that beautiful picture
Yeah, I was
there.
gonna say,
the
look at that
Latin
picture
women
right
of West
there.
Tampa, yeah. And then the next picture is, I'm not sure, that's my parents in Cuba. They had never been to Cuba. They were born in West Tampa, both of them. And so they went to Cuba in 1960. So that's 1960,
Suffice it
Cuba.
to say that they were of Cuban lineage?
Yes,
Both.
100%.
There you go.
Okay. The next photo shows my grandmother and my great-grandmother, probably on Nassau Street, because the whole Alvarez, Bataclan, they all lived on Nassau Street. They all worked at the Morgan Cigar Factory, right nearby.
Popular street.
Yeah.
Walking distance.
Oh, yeah. Oh, everything was walking distance. It was a wonderful.
So that's abuela y tatarabuela, no, y bisabuela.
Sí, Juana y Pepilla. And then my abuelo, Joseito. And here you actually see the kind of houses that they lived in, the cigar maker, typical cigar maker cottage. And that's on Nassau Street. And then the middle picture is moving way forward, maybe 60, 70, 80 years, is me at the Jose Marti Park when we sent a bus to Cuba with the Pastores de Paz.
Interesting.
Very nice.
Okay. Now, I also want to introduce this topic with a little bit of information, like how did I get to this obsession about West Tampa? And I must say that when I was at USF getting my master's degree, I was studying Latin America, and I was learning all about the Mapuche Indians and the Olmecs and the Toltecs in Mexico and Chile and Cuban history and Mexican history. And then I thought, I went to my professor and I said, Tampa is Latin America. And I want to study Tampa history. I want to study Tampa's Latin history. And so he said, thankfully, we study history to learn to know ourselves. And so it gave me permission to start looking at our own history. And I spent many, many hours at the Special Collections Library at USF, which has wonderful material.
Yeah, we've seen
We're
it.
familiar with
Oh,
them.
yes.
We want to go
Oh my
back.
God!
Andy Hughes
I
is a
could
friend of ours.
I
I'm
could
gonna spend
just
a week
live
there.
And so I read everything I could find on Tampa Latin history. And what I noticed, and some USF professors had written about Tampa, but mostly they went to Ybor City. So a couple of things I noticed, and this is why I'm obsessed now. West Tampa wasn't in the histories that were written, and Cubans were kind of disappeared in the histories. Mormino wrote the wonderful book, which I recommend to everybody, called The Immigrant World of Ybor City, Italians and Their Latin Neighbors. And I say, as my friend Kenya said, Tampa is Cuban at the core. If you think about the iconic images of Tampa, what are they?
That's our lamppost that you see there on the
Okay,
table.
what else?
The cigar factories.
Cigars.
Sure.
What else?
Cuban bread.
Café con leche.
Cuban bread.
El
What
café, el
else?
arroz y el frijoles negros.
Arroz
Frijoles
blanco.
negro.
Correct, correct.
Okay, Cuban to the core.
Correct.
And the reason is, and I'm going to explain that, because of our early history, which is built around cigars
Sure.
and Cuban workers.
Sure.
That's why we get these iconic images for Tampa. So we could start with our slide 1, and we're going to go through some images and tell the story at the same time.
We do know that the cigars were preeminently loaded with Cuban workers. There was the Cuban artisan that came in to roll the cigars. Hence, they were 80% of the population.
They were the majority.
The Asturianos came in to do some of the finance and certainly own some of the buildings and coordinate some of that activity. And the Italianos came in, the Sicilians came in, but they were vastly in a minority. So, to your point, Maura, the Cubans prevailed.
Yes.
The Cubans,
yes.
okay.
In fact, West Tampa was called Cuba City in the early days.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't
didn't
know
know
that.
And Ybor City was called Cuba Town.
Wow.
So that's how Cuban it is. Now we're talking 1880s, 1890s.
Sure.
So before
About the
it,
time of Martinez Ybor.
before
About that
it
time.
was, yeah. That's what the Anglos called it, and it's in the Tampa Tribune in those early years.
All right, picture number 1 back.
Let's go here.
Image number, I guess it's photo number 1.
Yeah, I want to talk about a project that I worked on in 2005 and 6. Some of the people listening or watching may remember that we did this major project called our West Side Stories, Voces de West Tampa. And I have to say the community came out strong in support of this project. We had events at the West Tampa Library. We had 4 forums, and I named them Roots, Rock, Race, and Renaissance. So 4 different themes talking about West Tampa. So Roots was the one about history, where most of the community people came out and displayed their history, talked about their history, brought photos, etc. And for this project, I call it a community autobiography.
There it is right there. There's a
Yeah.
graphic that
Yeah.
shows that.
And that wonderful photo of the cigar makers from West Tampa promoting themselves in the Gasparilla Parade of 1914.
1914.
Wow.
And it says, West Tampa makes the best cigars and uses the best Cuban tobacco. So very proud people. 1914, Gasparilla. And in this project, which I called a community autobiography, the reason for that was that a lot of people assumed I was going to write a book about the history of West Tampa. I am not writing a book. I am asking the community to write its own history.
Interesting.
And the way that I've envisioned that to happen was that people would send me stories, photos, memories. I got all that. I got poems. I got short stories. We had a dialogue. This was before Facebook.
But hasn't Facebook been wonderful? I
Oh,
interject.
I have so much more now. I was just
Voluminous
so
information
rich.
information.
coming your way.
But back then it was email group list
Wow.
with some old friends of mine from high school who were all over the country, really. And we started to talk about our growing up and memories and, a lot of serious issues that we went through. My generation went through a lot of serious issues. We're talking civil rights movement. We're talking the Kennedy assassination. We're talking Vietnam War. With
The end of Jim Crow.
Major
friends
events.
of ours dying in Vietnam. So So a lot of serious issues that we discussed then. So that's what the project was about. And I would say that it's still open to all of you all watching, that we would still love to collect your memories and your stories and your photos. And fortunately now we have Dan Perez.
Oh, yes. He's
We
amazing.
don't know that guy.
Oh my God.
We don't even like him, to be honest with you, Maura.
Oh
We
my
don't even-
God.
Yeah, Dan
This
is
guy is more obsessed than anybody
Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
yes.
In a
yes.
good way.
He is
Dan,
doing-
that's for you, by the way. We know you're out there watching, but
Yeah. He has this wonderful Facebook page called West Tampa, A Walk Down Memory Lane.
correct.
And so I started sending my photos there because I think it's a really
It's a
good
repository.
place
It's a
to
repository.
get the whole picture.
Sure.
So some of you may have seen that. I'm sending my collection. I have like 1,000 images and stories and articles. So hopefully it'll all be there someday. And USF will also have it. So what I want to do right now is read some examples in terms of the memories that I would like for people to send. I got whole family histories that were pages and pages. That's not really practical.
Yeah.
So what I have invented myself is something I call micro memories. If you could think about those moments in your life that impacted you the most, okay, that are part of your history, but part of the community's history
Sure.
at the same time.
Sounds
So I'm
like
going to
our
give
show.
you some
Here's
examples.
an example. I was going to suggest.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
I wrote this back in 2000 for the 100th anniversary of Martin Maceo Club in Ybor City. And they were 100 years old in the year 2000, yeah. So this is called Nosotros Somos. Now, do you know how to do the clave beat?
Tell me.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's the basis of all salsa music, by the way. Okay, so here I go. My ancestors are named Kunga, Yeya, Pepilla y Nene, Lina, Chumbi, Huicha y Tete, Pupi, Yoyi, Juana y Cheche, Baby, Elena, Margot y René. Some are buried at Woodlawn and some are buried at Colon. That's an example that tells you a whole lot. You know, it's very Cuban to have those funny nicknames.
Nicknames.
Oh,
yes.
We did a show on that.
No, we did an entire show dedicated to nicknames. And one thing we know for sure is peloteros, baseball players,
Yes.
and Latinos in particular.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a rite of passage.
Yes.
If you didn't have a nickname, mala suerte, because you needed, everybody had one.
Yes. I'm Moti, by the way.
And Cucufato was one of our
Paco,
favorites.
Paco Malo.
And it also tells you that we're American, we're buried at Woodlawn, but we're also buried back in Colon, our ancestors.
My abuelas
in
abuelas
Havana.
are there. Yep.
So,
Right.
so those micro memories can tell a lot. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you another one.
Please.
This is about my abuela Pepilla, 1955. I speak English now, except with abuela Pepilla, who has refused to learn. We speak less and less, but I listen to the conversations around the garlic kitchen table at her cigar maker house on Calle Chehri.
Cherry Street.
She wants me to learn to remember. She takes me to the Ciclo Cubano for a solemn occasion. I recall white dresses, white roses, bright sunshine, a white marble head. It is Jose Marti, an important man, she says, father of our country. He led the fight against the Spaniards and gave speeches in Tampa about social justice and racial equality. Later, I asked, wanting to be, Abuela, aren't your ancestors from Spain? She scowled, she wrinkled her nose, and she stated firmly, Nosotros somos cubanos.
Very nice.
Um,
A source of pride, a sense of pride.
Where did I get my identity? From my grandmother.
Sure.
You know, she reminded me that that's the place that we came from, and that we could never leave it. So again, a micro memory that tells a lot about who you are and how you get your identity, very often from the grandparents.
I like that term.
Could be a memorable birthday party in McFarland Park. Could be a memory of playing again Little League baseball at West Tampa Little League. Something
Powerful.
that's powerful.
Yes.
So will there be an email address that we can give them at the end of the show that we can?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
prepare for that, ladies and gentlemen out there. Again, with a pen and paper close by, so Maura can give you that email address because what a wonderful appeal to our fans and to now fans of Maura's to send her that information.
Absolutely.
Because we talked about it at the beginning of the show, Maura, if we're not careful, our identity starts to become
Fade away.
less and less important. And those of us that are the keepers of those stories have a responsibility to our abuelos who brought it all here for us to enjoy, that if we don't keep those stories, they go away.
And we have the advantage of
Of
digitizing everything.
technology. Of
It'll last
technology.
forever.
Yeah, you can put it all in a thumb drive.
So fabulous. And if you didn't hang out in your grandmother's kitchen and hear the stories, then you don't have it.
Right.
And what I tell my students at USF, I say, if you don't know your history, you cannot be proud.
Yep.
That's true.
And almost you can't even be present because doesn't that, we build today's
identity,
story.
really.
We stand on their shoulders.
Yeah.
They're the ones that, if they didn't put us here and make it better for us, we don't have this opportunity today. So very proud.
So true.
I'm going to read one more. This one's called Exiles on Main Street. You know, what is the title of the Rolling Stones album? My father built a Cape Cod house on Calle Main, surrounded by McFarland Park. We left poverty and abuelos behind in the barrio de Llega y Pon to join America. The house invited many, family and friends for Noche Buena feasts. The park invited many, new neighbors with strange names like Davis and Wallace and McCaffrey.
What an indoctrination.
Yeah. So that's some examples of things that I have written, but I'd love to hear more. And then I want to, before I go on, acknowledge everything I learned about West Tampa. I learned from a few people. Armando Mendez, who wrote the book Ciudad de Cigars, West Tampa. Everything you wanted to know about the cigar industry in West Tampa is in his book. Arsenio Sanchez, the late Arsenio Sanchez and the late Armando Mendez. And Arsenio has written some wonderful articles about West Tampa. And both of them have collections at USF, special collections. You can see all the stuff they collected. And of course, E.J. Salcinas, who is my greatest live source of everything and anything you ever wanted to know about West Tampa, the people, who was the cousin of who, and where did they live, and what did they do. He has it all in his head.
Wow.
Unfortunately, he doesn't write it down. So we have videotaped EJ recently.
Good.
And that'll be at
EJ still has his confab on Saturday mornings.
Oh, yes.
At El Gallo de Oro. So
Right.
Steve, we need to go over there so that we can appeal to EJ to come on the show with us.
Oh,
Right, and we have
yes.
talked to him in the past about that too.
Exactly.
Yeah, so-
Exactly.
He's the best, and you know, we can't
He's
lose
a Tampa
these
treasure.
people.
He's a Tampa
He's
treasure.
a treasure.
Absolutely.
And I love him. Thanks, EJ. Okay, so I think we can now go on with the slides and
All right.
tell the story of West Tampa.
Slide number 2, 3, or 4, whichever one
Two.
we were at. Slide number 2.
It should be
back.
2.
And bring that up, Maura. The floor is yours, my darling.
Yes, I always start my story with this image. On the left is Franklin Street, 1886. It is a frontier town, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, horse and buggy.
And on the right is Havana, about the same time,
Wow.
maybe 1900s. So
What a difference.
Wow.
The point is, Havana was the Paris of the Caribbean.
Yes.
Havana was a metropolis, a big city with cultural centers and opera
Infrastructure.
houses and
Indoor
social
plumbing.
clubs. And these poor people, especially those early residents, if you read their diaries, especially the women, oh, they have a really hard time adjusting to this
You can
muddy
imagine.
world with no
Yeah.
paving on the streets. Those cigar maker houses are real cute, but they were cold in the winter and they were hot in the summer. So it wasn't a great life. So you really have to respect these
Sure.
people who came from these places.
From strolling down a promenade with a parasol to making your way through the fango and the mud
The fungal.
of West Tampa and Ybor City.
Yeah.
Big
What
change.
what a yeah what a
Extravagance to bare necessities.
Yeah.
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 And they brought that, and the beauty is they do bring their culture with them, and we'll see some examples of that. So on the next slide, needless to say, the cigar boom begins in 1886. Mostly the cigar maker factory owners come from Key West, from Havana to Key West to Tampa. That's a lot of people in Tampa have that history. Spain, Cuba, Key West, Tampa.
Yes.
Very
That was the
often.
migratory route.
That was the cigar route. Yes, that was the migration. So, we get thousands of lovely cigar labels, but this is one of my favorite ones because it shows how close we are geographically. This was a natural trading route.
As it could be and should be today.
And it could be today.
And should be.
Because Tampa and Havana are in a direct line.
Yes.
So they were very smart. The reason they moved their cigar industry from Cuba was to get away from the Spanish taxes.
Oppressive taxes, right?
Yeah. So, so we're very fortunate that they then come to Tampa because in Key West, the workers were going on strike and they were having fires and there wasn't really a railroad down there. Transportation was shipping, so they had transportation problems, worker problems, and fires. And then the Tampa Board of Trade actually invites them to come to Tampa. And this amazing boom happens. So Ybor City, of course, is the first cigar city to grow and boom. We go from 800, population of 800, to like 25,000 by 1910.
It's a lot.
It's a big jump.
Yeah, so it's...
In but 20 years?
Yeah.
Yes, a short
Yeah.
period of
15
time.
years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
all because of the
huge.
industry.
It's
Cigar.
huge. So really the foundation of Tampa is built on cigars.
Built on tobacco, cigar
Yeah,
tobacco.
the economy, the shipping, all of the industries, and we can keep going here on to the
sure.
next slide. So this gentleman named Hugh McFarlane, who is on the Tampa Board of Trade, is a prominent citizen of Tampa. He's the city lawyer, I believe, gets the idea to duplicate this wonderful success story of Ybor City, and he decides to duplicate it west of the river, of downtown, with 200 acres. And in 1892, he plats the city, and we can go to the next slide and show you his original plan. I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah.
that's the original plan by McFarland, 1892, and what I love about it is it's very Latin American in its construction. You see the Central Plaza?
Yeah, sure do.
Yeah.
Plaza Mayor, like
Yeah,
in Spain.
all Latin American
Yep.
towns, cities have a Central Plaza
Yep.
with the important buildings around it. I don't know where McFarlane got the idea, but I have a feeling one of those Cubans,
Somebody helped.
Spaniards, gave him that idea.
A night after drinking some rum, perhaps, they
Yeah.
got together
Smoking some
and,
cigars.
Unfortunately, we don't have the Central Plaza. Howard Avenue went right through it.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
that's one thing that we
Excuse me.
haven't done a real great job of over the course of our history, unfortunately, is
Saving.
preserving. And I know there are some people that we talked to, Joe Howden among them, and Don Barco in Ybor City, and there are others that are working with all their heart and soul to try to make sure that we can continue to preserve what we have left.
A lot has disappeared.
Yes, even in our
but
lifetime.
We still,
Maura.
West Tampa is unique because we didn't get urban renewal.
Correct.
We did lose a lot with the freeway. So we still have a lot of those little houses. They're in West Tampa.
Casitas.
Yes.
They're not in Ybor City anymore.
Yes.
Nobody lives in Ybor City. And that's why I keep saying West Tampa is a place to preserve.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have the first. McFarland was so anxious to get the cigar industry going because big money came in with the cigar industry. So we have the first cigar factory built at where the West Tampa Library is now. It's the Del Pino factory. He gave them the land. He built the factory for them. And then he goes on to actually pave streets, bring in electricity, bring in the, what do you call those, streetcars.
Streetcar, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he built the bridge because they complained about they couldn't get
Couldn't
to
get
Ybor
there.
City. They couldn't get anywhere. They were stuck in this Wild West. So he built a bridge.
Howard
for
Avenue, the
them.
Wild
right.
West.
I know.
Yeah. So the first bridge is the Fortune Street Bridge,
There you
built
go.
by McFarland.
Things have changed.
So then we have the next, you can see this is a really old newspaper article that shows how this is about West Tampa, all these factories pop up all over West Tampa. And it's being promoted as the other cigar city. And let me see that
Did
next.
West Tampa, if I could ask Maura, did West Tampa have its own need for an identity? In other words, Ybor City was doing what Ybor City was doing at the time, flourishing certainly, and then West Tampa being Adam's rib, like, you know, it was the adjunct.
Yeah.
But did they feel the need to, well, we're West Tampa, we're a separate entity, we're going to do our thing and be not competing with, but stand alone and separate apart? Or did they take Ybor City and say, okay, we're going to work together? Was there infighting between the two?
No, the workers went back and forth.
Interchangeable? Okay.
Yeah. You know, if you're mobile, you have a better chance of improving your wages.
There you go.
But it is the city of West Tampa, separate from Tampa, separate from Ybor, from 1895 to 1925.
Very good. As is Temple Terrace, because this is
Yeah.
not Temple
Yeah.
Terrace,
Temple
its own
Terrace is-
municipality?
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they resist being taken over by the city of Tampa for good reason, which
Well, because they're
we'll
Cuban
explain.
and cabezadura, and you know, that's how we do
No,
things.
it wasn't just that. So
I say affectionately.
I wanted to go to the next slide to show you how quickly this community developed. There's a scene from 1894. This is Tony Pizzo's collection. This is Green Street,
Wow.
probably from a bridge. So this is 1894. That's 2 years after that plan that McFarland had put out.
Just 2 short years.
2 years. And
What
then look,
happened?
there's houses.
It's amazing.
Where did they get the wood? Where did they get the bricks? Where did they get the concrete? Where did-
That's a good question.
amazing growth.
It was good for the construction business.
I bet it was.
Now, here's my favorite building, which is called the Cespedes Hall.
Mm-hmm.
The Cubans called it the Five of Clubs. It
Okay.
has 5 towers. And we'll talk about that building later on. But so very early on, because remember the Cubans are used to having social clubs
Sure.
and a social life and
Yes.
a cultural life.
Yes.
That's the first thing they built.
Oh. Just the center.
Okay, 1894.
Recreation was very important. They
Yeah,
worked
that's
hard, but they
their
wanted to play
social
hard.
club.
Sure.
That was
Now they're
critical.
very politically involved in the independence movement,
Mm-hmm.
so they're meeting there. They put a school in there. It's the best opera house south of Jacksonville, according to newspapers of that time.
Nice.
So it's really quite an amazing building.
And remembering the story as you were telling it, Maura, they're bringing with them that culture, that European culture that was so
Yes.
thriving in Cuba, and trying to recreate it here in West Tampa.
You got it.
Okay.
Recreating Havana. You know, they saw themselves as like a suburb of Havana,
Mm-hmm.
really. It wasn't that far. Okay, we'll keep going here. I think we have...
Imagine the Olivet and the mascot were making almost daily, if not weekly, runs. So there was
Yeah.
constant movement between
constant.
the two ports.
Yeah.
Next photograph, back. This is great, guys. This is
very
good
fascinating.
stuff.
Very informative,
And
that's for sure.
go, 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 Maura, because we want to get through all of
Mutual
this.
aid societies.
Okay, so mutual aid societies. These are ideas that come from Havana. There are some fabulous ones in Havana. But they're all immigrant groups in Latin America and in the U.S. Create these mutual aid societies. Because, keep in mind, there's no Social Security, there's no food stamps, there's no Medicaid, there's no Medicare, there's no pension. So they have to take care of themselves. So they create these cooperatives, and later on they build the first hospitals in Tampa, the best hospitals in Tampa. Quite amazing.
Again, medical practices were further well advanced in Cuba than they were here in the States.
Yes.
Especially in Florida at that time.
And
in New York,
they
and up
were
north.
dying. These poor guys tuberculosis was wiping them out, other diseases.
The mosquito.
So medical care was really important to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the
Quality of life.
The Asturianos built their hospital, and then the Centro Español built their hospital on Bayshore Boulevard. Mm-hmm. So let's go from there. So here we're back in West Tampa, early days. That's the city hall on the left, and another street scene with the bank and what is Salsinas's store later on. I'm not sure if it's Salsinas that early. We can move on.
And those early street scenes are wonderful too, because you can see just how primitive is the correct
Bare.
word?
What's primitive?
I mean, you know, those electric poles were, you know, as bare as it could possibly be, and I imagine there were all kinds of issues that came with that exposed wiring, and you know, it was just
a lot of
Quite
fires.
an adventure, I'm sure.
A lot of fires. Now that next slide is really important. The mayors of West Tampa.
There you go.
Now here's why I think West Tampa developed a really unique system and identity, because if you look, I don't know, you can't see the names, but 5 of those mayors are Cubans. Okay, they're not even citizens, and they're mayors of the
Running
city
an
of West Tampa. Fernando Figueredo is the first one, 1895.
At the 12 o'clock position?
Yes, 12 o'clock. He is a hero of the Cuban Independence War. Milian, I don't remember his first name. Francisco Milian, down to the right. Blas O'Halloran, although he has an Irish name, we have a lot of Irish people in Cuba.
Sure.
believe
And
it or
German as
not.
well. And German as well.
O'Halloran,
Funny.
O'Halloran, as they say, is from Cuba. The last mayor at the bottom is Enrique Enriquez, ancestor of Bob Enriquez.
Okay,
Our
very
tax
good.
collector
Very,
now.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I can't remember who the other, George Benjamin is there. I can't remember. So I say that because Cubans had political power, economic power, they were able to define their community without having to negotiate too much with the Anglo world in Tampa.
Right.
And so you get some really interesting developments from that. Okay, so the next slide is, McFarland is a great entrepreneur. He's promoting West Tampa. This is an example of one of his promotional brochures. He's showing off all the cigar factories. Now they've changed from wood cigar factories to brick.
Brick and mortar. Circa
Yeah.
1920? Would you say it's the 20s already?
1910s probably.
Okay, earlier
Really?
still.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
Elinche, which is Ellinger, is brick. And that's pretty early, like 1904,
Okay.
05. Yeah. Might be the first brick one. EJ will have to correct me on that. But so because they had so many fires, and Armando Mendez's collection has pictures of all those fires.
Which would have
were
been devastating.
horrible.
Which would
Yeah,
have been
horrible.
devastating.
1907, 1918.
Was it 1919 another one, Steve? There was the big fire of, I think it was...
Ybor had some
Ybor,
terrible
Ybor, yeah, Ybor.
fires. So having a fire department became really important too. Okay, so now we're going to go into the cigar factory. and see some images of cigar workers. This was a very interesting place in terms of labor. The hands on the left are probably women. Women worked in the cigar factories, usually in the position of the strippers. They stripped the tobacco leaves all day long and they bent over. My grandmother did that for 30 years. Many of our grandmothers did that. But they also were cigar makers. It really depended, it was merit. Merit-based. If you could be an apprentice and learn how to make cigars, then you could work in the cigar factory, galeria, and earn the same wages as every other cigar maker, whether you were a woman or a man or black or white. Your skill
was about the art.
Your skill was valued.
Right.
And they considered themselves artists, artisans. And they had some kind of special rights that went along with that. For example, you decide when you're done with work for the day.
Really?
If you met your quota and you feel like going home, you went home. If you wanted to go home for lunch, you went home for lunch and you had a nap.
I like that idea.
If you wanted to take a walk around La Manzana, take a walk around the block, you did that. So they had a lot of freedom because they were artists. They also had the lector reading to them all day, so they were very educated and loved to debate. That's what they did after work every night. So let's keep going, and I hope I
Please.
have another. Yeah, I love this one on the left because that does show the women cigar makers, if we could show that one closer. And on the right are also women, the strippers.
That's one thing that we've talked about before,
There you go.
Maura, is that that talent and that skill set, you know, as you progressed and you got better and better, so your wage reflected that as well. To hearing you relate the story, it's almost like a pelotero today or a professional athlete today. In other words, the higher your skill set, the more you were appreciated by those that were making the pay at the time.
Yep.
So it behooved you to do well, and to do well early in your life.
Yeah.
You know, I think the breweries were like that too. You had there was a craft really. You had the master brewers.
Well, that's another art.
Yeah.
It's like an art.
And you
It's-
know,
yeah.
everybody in the community knew who was the best cigar maker.
Isn't that something?
They were the heroes.
They had a reputation.
They were respected.
There you
Okay?
go. There you go. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. So,
Next image.
yeah. I'm not sure. Okay.
I think
There
we're
it is, right there.
Yeah, I have
Yep.
more women workers because I
On
think
the left is women, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to
They're all women, yeah.
acknowledge
Yeah.
that they weren't just men making cigars. Women were very involved. I think these women are packing the cigars into the boxes, and they're having to match the color of every cigar.
Which was an important feature because
Yes.
you wanted that to more.
And then they would put the little ring on and the labels and
Label.
all that. So that was an important job. And this is just a group of women standing outside of Morgan Cigar Factory. And thanks to James Leone, who sent me that picture, a wonderful West Tampa person who was a music teacher for many years. I met the best people in the world doing this project.
Let me just say, Maura, for those that may just be joining us now, because it is 7:15, and we do realize that we started tonight's show at 6:30. If you're just settling in front of your TV now, we're talking to Maura Barrios. We're getting a wonderful history lesson on West Tampa. Specifically now, they're talking about the cigar industry. But if you happen to have any stories or photographs, perhaps even rare film footage, and you'd like to have that preserved, archived, Maura is making an appeal to anybody out there watching or who may know somebody. Please reach out to us here at the Tampa Native Show. We will certainly coordinate with Maura. We want to preserve all of those artifacts before they're lost. They're so important to our history. And that's just an appeal we want to make to you now. Forgive me for interrupting,
That's
Maura. I
okay.
want to make sure we got that out there.
We can keep going through these slides, and I'll tell the history as we go along.
There you go.
Okay, this was El Chulo of West Tampa, the lector. That is De La Grana, I believe. But you see, these were the true intellectuals and so respected in the community. If we could show the whole slide. So there's that's Cuesta Rey, by the way, on the right. People mislabeled that. I've seen it mislabeled many times. It is Cuesta Rey. Cuesta Rey was in the heart of West Tampa on Howard Avenue.
I wonder how many of our viewers had family members
Yes.
that worked at Cuesta Rey, and I bet you there's a lot.
And Cuesta was there's a book about Cuesta written by a Spaniard who came through Tampa recently. And I need to say that Cuesta was special. He actually gave the money to build the elementary school called Cuesta Elementary on Cherry Street and Tampania. So these were benefactors for the community. It was a very self-reliant community. You know, if they needed something, if they didn't have schools, they built it. If they needed a community center, they built it.
They needed recreation land. They cut down the trees and created a ballpark.
They didn't wait. And you know, George Guida kept up that tradition later on in the 50s. I hope we can talk about him too. Let me see. Okay. Let's continue, please. Okay, it's really important. Here was the interesting thing. The Tampa Board of Trade promised the cigar factory owners that they would control the workers and they will not allow them to go on strike and stop the industry, and everybody loses money and everybody's angry, so they were going to control it. And they lived up to that promise. The cigar makers are very radical. In Cuba, they were radical. In Key West, they were radical. And in Tampa, they continued that tradition. They start the first union around 1899, and it's called La Resistencia.
The resistance.
Okay, and they go on strike. So here on the left is an image from that early strike, and that's a soup kitchen. And you notice that they are people of all colors.
Afro-Cuban there too? Sure.
Yeah. And so that's the first strike, and on the right side is the last strike. And that strike was 1931, and it's about the factory owners eliminating the readers, the lectores.
That's
And
good.
the whole
Yeah.
cigar worker community hit the streets.
Wow.
They didn't win any strikes, unfortunately, except for that early first one. There was also a wait strike that they won. But
It's interesting.
there's a wonderful novelist named Jose Iglesias. I don't know if too many people know about him. He was born in West Tampa, but he writes about Ybor City, and he writes about his generation growing up in Tampa and Ybor City, and he tells these wonderful stories. Jose Iglesias with a Y. His novels include Awake in Ybor, The Truth About Them.
That's a lovely title.
It's really good. Try them. Try it if you like. If you want to read about your own history.
With the tradition that the Cubans brought with them to the United States, to Tampa in particular, and the fact that they were at times, incorrigible, irascible, and unsettled, that kind of lent itself to the volatility. But at the same time, I imagine to have a workforce that was energized like that was a good thing if you managed to keep them forward thinking and happy. When you had problems was if you drove wedges or if there were issues amongst the employees and the paymasters at that time. I'm just guessing. You know, I'm getting a sense that they showed up for work early and they were industrious and they believed in putting in a hard day's work.
Yeah.
But if their pay was due, pay them.
It was always about. It was not about money. Their strikes. It was about respect.
There you go.
Yeah. It was. The wait strike is about respect. How dare you put in scales to weigh the tobacco
Right.
Right.
to this artist who been doing this for.
It's insulting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was insulting.
And again,
Yeah.
bear in mind, they just got here from Cuba, Paris of the Caribbean, and they're here at basically what we consider today to be El Monte.
El Monte.
El Monte. Okay, we're in the outback. We're out in the frontier world, and you're going to tell us.
Right.
Yeah.
How dare you? Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that. What an interesting
called,
time, Maura. What an interesting time.
They called the Anglos, Jose Iglesias writes, as barbarians with hair on their teeth.
Wow! There's a bell ring. There's a. You know what? You have to acknowledge that.
Bárbaros con pelo de dientes.
Wow.
Hair on their teeth.
Let's write that one
I
down.
don't want to see that.
That's
Love
Jose Iglesias.
All right, next image.
Okay, so what happens? These people, continue to go on strike. They go on strike in 1910. There's a 10-month strike, and this devastates
That's a pretty
that
daunting image right there.
Tampa economy. This is a shocker.
Yeah.
When I first saw this in Robert Ingles' book, Urban Vigilantes in the New South, he writes about the labor history. And he writes about the Red Scare, because you start to get this anti-immigrant, being accused of being anarchists, being accused of being Bolsheviks around this time, 1910 to 1920. You get this racial element, so it gets very violent. And I'm telling you,
Frontier violent.
very
Yep.
violent.
Swinging
We are
saloon door violent.
talking tar and feathering,
Wow.
people lynching, mobs going after the labor union organizers, deported. The mayor of West Tampa was sent away because he was a lector. The lectors especially were picked on as being
The
the
intellectuals.
voice of the radicals,
Right.
or teaching them
Yeah.
these anarchist socialist ideas.
Indoctrinators.
And they were reading the international press at the time. These ideas were not unique to Tampa, Florida. These were the ideas floating in the whole United States.
Correct.
Okay, there was a huge movement of workers organizing at that time. So, and they were paying attention. They were watching all this. And they were getting news from all over the world. So,
Well, suffice it to say, Maura, that the workers were in a head-down position because their work was literally on the table in front of them.
Yeah.
And the lectores were in a head-up position because they were reading, and literally
Yeah.
they could oversee. So that juxtaposition, I
That's a
guess,
good point,
you know,
yeah.
it kind of, that was their vision.
Yeah.
The artisans had to be down here because this is where it was all happening for them, but the lectores were able to sort of herd, if you will, and hence drew the ire of those in charge. So, but I think, all things being equal, I probably would have been tried to have been a lector at the time because,
yeah.
because they were the ones that kind of, they ran the risk, they had greatest risk, but so too came the greatest reward.
And it's important to note the workers paid the lectores.
Correct.
And they chose the lector. They
There's
had
the
to
other thing.
audition.
I didn't know
How about that?
That's
Yeah, they
interesting.
had to audition, and they would act out the novels. So they were well paid. So you would have been a lector.
And they were trilingual.
No TV, no radio, my man.
Yes, and they were trilingual, and they translated these stories.
Fascinating.
Just
And
amazing.
I'm guessing the lectores probably didn't buy too many beers at the end of the week.
No,
on
they
their
were
payday.
probably
They-
very
they were-
well taken
They
care
were
of.
probably like they were the come
They
sit at
were
our
very
table.
popular.
Yeah, I'm guessing so.
Absolutely.
They were buying books.
Now let me interject because
Okay.
it is 7:30. We're at the bottom of the hour. We've already completed the first hour of the show today. Stevie, you're keeping track of the photos. How far along are we? About
Well,
halfway?
we're about,
Oh, wow.
we're not even halfway, actually.
Okay, 'cause
we're at number 18 out of
What I'd like
47.
to suggest is we might do one of two things. We can continue just like we are now and just not take any phone calls this evening, or we could kind of suspend where we are currently. Maura, I'll give you the option. You're our guest tonight. Suspend where we are currently. Then go ahead and take a few phone calls so we can hear from our guests, from our viewers, excuse me, and then continue the conversation on another show with Maura. There's no doubt about it. Maura's going to have to come back
probably
because
2 or 3
Maybe-
shows.
because there's you know what we
So
just
many.
what happened was they loaded a side of beef on the car, you know what I mean, to take home, and now we got it home, and now how are we going to cut this up?
And we
There's
have-
too much.
And we do have questions here from
And
some of
hurry
the
up
fans.
because if we don't get salt on this thing, something's going to happen. We don't have
Right.
refrigeration.
And we do have some fan questions and some
And I
comments
know
as
that
well.
our fans
I'd
right
love
now.
to hear. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear what they
So
have
so
to say.
with your permission, Maura, if we can just, with 30 minutes to go, and we've got a video that we want to show as well,
Right.
about a 4-minute video. What do you say, Steve? Are we in consensus here? Can we go ahead and
Oh,
open up the phone lines
think-
for a minute, Maura? Would that be okay?
That's
I
great.
think that'd be
Okay,
great.
and just know that we have just got about a third of the way through the photographs. We had over 50 photographs tonight. We've probably showed you about 10 or 15 maybe. And each one comes with its own little story. So let's go ahead and open up the phone lines. We're going to do that. We're going to wade into that pool now. And here come the callers at 813-977-6800. Hello, Dory is standing by. If you've been waiting to call in and speak to Maura, now's your opportunity to do so. Steve,
Well,
why don't you go ahead and, while we're waiting
Yeah,
for
while
the
we're waiting,
callers
let's read some of
to
these.
load up,
Absolutely.
please do. Maura, thank you for indulging us. And listen,
Yeah,
we're
definitely.
you're going to
Fascinating.
come back. So
It is really extremely
no sense of
fascinating.
apuro here. Let's just
No, that's great.
you know, because as we know, Stevie, how do you eat an elephant, Maura?
I don't know.
bite at a
One bite at a
time.
One bite at a time. Believe me, this is an elephant here, folks. We've got a lot of information. we wanna
20
share.
years worth of work.
It's a delicious elephant.
And
It
we
is.
don't want to rush through with a little
It's a
mojo.
chocolate
Little
elephant.
mojo. Yeah, chocolate elephant. Very good. Look at the callers, Maura. Go ahead, Stevie.
Well, anyway, we have one from Jim Hooper. He writes, great show. Love the history of West Tampa, and Maura is a knowledgeable guest. In case you're talking about the Bolita tonight, please play number 58 for me, which we do have that. Emilio Garcia, he sent us a couple emails. He wrote, on the southwest corner of Main and North Boulevard, there was a cafe owned by a man named Manuel. Do you happen to know who that person might be, or that cafe might be called? On the corner of North Boulevard and Main.
Oh my gosh.
There was a cafe
no,
owned by Manuel.
no. That's pretty much Robert City area.
Is it? Yeah, okay.
Robert City, that's another place we need to talk about as well.
And he did mention also that Babe Ruth would also visit the Santayella cigar factory to place his orders for cigars.
Because we know he was a famous cigar
oh
smoker.
yeah, oh huge.
As
There is
everybody.
a photo of that
Oh,
somewhere.
really?
Yes.
Interesting.
You want to go ahead and go to
That's
our
Emilio
first
right there.
caller?
Yes,
Hang
yeah.
on to your next
have a couple
question,
more. We have a couple
please,
more.
and we'll start with caller on line 4 currently. Don't give it away, Stevie.
Okay.
Caller, you're on
Try
the
not to.
air. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, look at
Emilio
that.
Garcia Jr. We knew that. Hey, Emilio, how are you?
I gave it away.
Emilio.
I gave it
We'll
away.
give you a bell ring because we haven't heard from you in a little while. How are you tonight?
All right, fine, y'all.
Good. Did you have a question from Maura or a comment for us?
I've been doing research for a long time. There was a cafe on the corner, on the southwest corner of Main and North Boulevard. The owner's name was Manuel, but I can't find nothing on that cafe.
Hopefully somebody out there listening tonight may have that information, and hopefully they'll call in. If not, send us an
I'll
email.
tell you who to get in touch with. If you know George Lopez, he's written the history of Robert City
Oh.
and has done a mapping of all the businesses that existed there. And we might be able to find that for you at USF Special Collections.
I still want to invite you. I'm going to put you down in my group growing up in Ybor City.
There you go.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Because Emilio is the creator
Or
and
admin.
administrator
Chairman of the board.
of about 3 or 4 different pages on Facebook, and one of them in particular is like.
He's my favorite guy
Well, there you go.
on Facebook.
There
Are
you go,
kidding?
Emilio. You got a raging
I
endorsement
know.
tonight. Did we get your Bolita number?
I also wanted to, yeah, we give it to him.
Okay.
Fine. I also wanted to tell y'all, don't forget, Babe Ruth used to visit Santa Aya Cigar Factory to place his order for his cigar.
Wow,
Yep.
that's great. That's
Old
a
people.
great factoid there. So what we need to do now is we need to find a
Before
picture.
we hang up,
Uh-huh.
my maternal grandmother's uncle was Sarapin Sanchez from Sanchez and Aya.
Wow, there you
Cigar
go.
Factory on the southeast corner of 7th Avenue and Broadway,
Wow.
Does it,
1800s.
Papa, you don't get any more Ybor City
No.
than Emilio Garcia
No, no.
Jr., huh?
You can also talk about Key West if you want to.
Well, that's going to be for
another
another show. But listen, thank you for calling. We knew that we get you
I-
tonight on the phone.
And I am so glad to have talked to Maura. Thank you.
Thank you,
thank
Emilio.
you
We
for
appreciate it.
Night.
Bye-bye.
that.
Good night. Isn't that great?
He's the best.
You got any more, Stevie? Any more emails there?
Well, Jim Carney, he wrote.
Sure.
We talked about the brick factories earlier.
Sure.
He mentioned that the bricks came from the ships, and the bricks were used as a ballast in the sailing ships, and then for construction. After that, for the factories.
There you go. There you go. And
Interesting.
how about utility? How about being utilitarian?
Yeah.
Ballast for the ships. Once they got here,
It's
here's your cargo.
made perfect sense.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think he's confusing colonial history
Could be.
with turn of the century.
Which is very possible.
Yeah.
That's what they did when they landed in New England, yes.
Yeah.
We do know that that's how Ballast Point in Tampa
That's
got
right.
its name.
That's right.
Because
talked
the
about
ships
that.
would come in heavy with rocks to give the ships ballast, but they needed to offload the ballast to be able to get into port, so hence they would dump their rocks, and that point became known as
Ballast Point.
Ballast Point. There's a little factoid for you. caller. You're on the air. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
My Robert Gonzalez.
Robert Gonzalez. How are you, Robert?
Doing really good. I'm doing really good. You know I couldn't keep from not calling.
No. We expected this
we're
call.
waiting
It
for
was
you to
just a
call.
matter of time.
You know, you guys know I'm a second-generation native of Tampa.
Yes.
My ancestors came actually from Spain to the Canary Islands, and from the Canary Islands to Cuba, and then from Cuba. The same route that Bimbo took from
Sure.
Cuba to Key West, and then from Key West to Ybor City. But, you know, I now live in West Tampa. I've been living here since I was 1 year old in 1953. And I know, well, Mark Barrows' great-grandfather was a lector.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and, you know, the
Mark
lector at that
Barrow
time
or
was
Mark
amazing. I mean,
Barrios?
my ancestors were all cigar makers. I told you before, I carry by telling them, oh, my grandma was a stripper. And they look at me kind of weird, and I say, the person that pulls the vein off the cigar leaf.
Right.
Yeah, you know, she worked at in Ybor City, what they call the Regime Boy, the cigar factory that was right across the street from the Economica Pharmacy.
Right.
And she worked there, and you know that's the one with the big clock tower, and they were
Correct.
And because the Spanish couldn't pronounce the German owner's name, and so they you know made it a Regime Boy. But
Isn't that that's
Oh,
fabulous.
Regenberg.
Sure.
yeah,
That's funny.
El reloj.
you know,
That's exactly right. Robert, did we get your bolita number tonight?
36.
36 it is, and we're going to see you on Sunday. Listen, those stories are precious. Don't you ever forget them. And if you're at risk of forgetting them, write them down because that's a rich part of our history. Most of us experienced that. Either had a grandfather, grandmother, or perhaps both that worked in the cigar industry. My great-grandfather, Mendoza, apellido Mendoza, from Cuba, was also a lector. So, I mean, it's just wonderful to keep this viable in the conversation as we talk about our history going forward. So thank you for calling tonight, Robert.
Well, when I see Saturday, I want to get with you about the thing that you're trying to get about the stories of Tampa.
We will do that. We will do that. And if you have any photographs or rare footage, film footage, or even just stories like the ones you're telling us now, write them down, share them with Maura so she can include them also in her archives. Thank you,
Is she
Papa.
going to give
All
an
right.
email address?
Thank you so much. We'll do that now. As a matter of fact, why don't we do that before
Yeah.
we get much further along? Do you have an
Can you
email
write
address?
it down?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll write this down, Becky, if you want to type this in, and then you can show it on the
Actually,
screen.
they can send it to the Growing Up in West Tampa or the
The Facebook page?
pictorial, Tampa Pictorial.
Well,
So
not
it's
everyone
all
will
in
have
one
Facebook
place.
Not
access.
everyone
Yeah,
does have
not
Oh,
everybody
that's
does.
true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're hoping that at least they have email.
Or they can send it to us too, and we can forward it to her.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Want to do it that way? Keep it simple?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Maura?
Let's do-
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
then we'll do that. We'll
Okay.
be Maura's clearinghouse. So, and we won't charge for that. So if you have anything you'd like to share, good times, right, darling?
Good times.
Good times at tampanativeshow.com. And why do we call it that?
Because that's what we do here.
That's
It's
what
good
we
times.
do here.
Yeah.
Because that's what we have
good
here at
times.
the Tampa Native Show. Good times. All right, Stevie, do you have any more emails?
No, I think we have those covered.
We have two lines open, 813-977-6800. If you'd like to get in a call real quick, question, comment, cheers or jeers. We'll decide whether or not we're going to get
No
through with the
jeers,
jeers.
no jeers.
Real quick,
tonight.
Joe Abini, he did email.
Joe
and he
Abini.
said, talking about baseball, in 1962, West Tampa Little League was chartered. 1962, West Tampa Little All-Stars, the first year they competed, they played for the district title game against North Seminole Little League at that time, 1962. So little,
And I think Joe probably was part of the South Seminole Little League
Probably
at that
so.
time.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, West Tampa, in addition to Maura, and you know this full well.
baseball.
Yeah, as a Chico Escuela once said on Saturday Night Live, baseball been very, very good to West Tampa.
Yes.
You know, Rich, and again, that's all part of the Cuban
Hey,
tradition.
Tony La Russa in my neighborhood.
Yep.
Lou Pinella in my neighborhood. Tino Martinez in my
The
neighborhood.
How
Magadan
about
brothers. So, you know, that all
It's a
came
lot.
from the origins, which came from Cuba. I mean, let's face it. And you know, Al Lopez put us on the map. We've talked about him many, many times.
Yeah.
You know,
And,
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question to Maura. It's Maura, in West Tampa, a lot of the street names are named after trees, like spruce,
Yes.
cherry, chestnut.
Yes.
I mean, what is the reason for that?
That was the original names that McFarland gave it. And then so this controversy, Beach Street was Beach the tree.
Not Beach, the Beach. Yeah, right, correct.
And then they changed it to Ponce de Leon. And the 400th anniversary of Ponce de Leon in Florida. And then they changed it back, but they misspelled it.
Oh.
Oh no.
How about that? I didn't know
Interesting.
that.
Gee,
Yeah.
that happens
So
Now-
beach like the tree, Ponce de Leon,
Beach.
then beach like the La Playa.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. How about that?
crazy West Tampa.
Well,
Another
that's
interesting.
We're very capable of being crazy too.
Another interesting thing about Tampa being Cuban at the core.
Okay.
All of the streets in Palmacia are named after the streets of Old Havana.
San
Oh,
Carlos.
I didn't
San
know
Jose?
that.
San
That
Jose.
explains
Yeah.
a lot.
San Miguel, San Luis.
Obra
Yeah.
Vasconia?
Wow.
Vasconia?
Empedrado.
Empedrado.
Wow.
Tacon?
Okay.
What's the big one? Oh gosh.
Which one, Mama? Beta Bay? Which one?
No,
Oh,
no. There's the big street in
I know,
Havana.
I know.
There's also the big
Oh,
street
It's not
here.
Barcelona.
Is it
But that's
Barcelona's
another one. That's
one
another
of
one. That's another
them.
one. Good one, baby.
Matanzas?
No, that's in
No.
West
No,
Tampa.
that's
We're
West
talking about
Tampa.
South Tampa.
Okay.
El Prado.
El
Prado. That
Prado.
was my neighborhood.
El Prado.
Yeah.
Ding,
That's
ding,
the
ding.
big
I give
street.
myself a bell ring for that one.
You
We're
get
not-
the bolita for
There you
that
go.
one.
There you
El
go.
Prado. Yeah,
And don't forget,
all-
we're going to have a bolita drawing here shortly. So if you want to get in on that, either send us an email real quick, or better than that, call us and we can take it. We got 2 lines open currently, 813-977-6800. What a rich history, huh?
Yes.
And
What
we
an
haven't
interesting
even
show.
talked about the food or the music, because right now everything is still centered around economic development, las sociedades, the family unit. Although we haven't really talked about the family, only as it relates to Abuela worked in the cigar factory, my mother worked in the cigar factory, kind of thing. But you know, the art, the music, the art.
Theater was
Theater,
the big,
thank
the
you,
big
theater.
pastime in these places.
And Tampa and Ybor City and West Tampa was a big, huge stopover. We know when the big acts left New York on the way to Havana, they
That's right.
always stopped here because they knew there was a thriving
That's right.
community that appreciated their art.
Yes.
So
And you know, I think some of the future slides that we're going to play later
we'll get
on
to that.
are,
We'll get
are
to
into
that.
the actual theater
So that was a little
aspect.
spoiler alert on my
Yeah.
part, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. But that just means when we bring Maura back in a few weeks,
Exactly.
make sure you mark that on your calendar because we've just begun to tell the story. But we don't want to leave tonight, Maura. Is there anything that you want our viewers to know? Now, you know, if there's a particular picture that we can show, and then we can come back when you come back and show it again and talk about it again. But is there one that you want to leave us with, or a couple that you
My
want?
favorite?
Please.
You want to see my favorite?
Absolutely.
I don't know if she can go to number 38.
Number 38. If you can
Yeah.
find that back.
That's
in-
my favorite too.
Is it really?
Yes,
well,
it is.
Well,
It
I'll
is.
be the judge of that,
I
Steve.
haven't seen
That's
it
my-
yet.
oh.
so I
Really,
can't
really
say.
tells you about West Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
And we haven't seen a lot of these
Today.
pictures
We
No,
have
I
to see
haven't
this
seen it.
picture.
Recent West Tampa.
because we
There
didn't
it
talk-
is.
I call it the multicultural cow.
Oh, there it is.
Remember that?
There it is.
And the casitas in the
Casa de la
background.
Malomia, bro.
Because here you can get Italian sausage, what does
Yes.
it say? Cuban sandwich, Italian sausage, palomilla, and of course the American Western cow.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
that's funny.
That's Armenia, right?
It's
Classic.
Armenia.
Classic.
And I hear it's faded, the cow now, but
He's taking a beating. The sun has not been.
I took that in 2006. So
Somebody should paint him again.
Yes, I think that, and
yeah,
that's a part of
tell
our
them to
history.
Paint
Yes,
the cow.
yeah.
As Snack City was
Restoration.
right there, you know what I mean, on Columbus Drive before it went
I
away
have a
across
picture
the
of
street.
Snack City,
across
too.
the street from Latam.
That's an icon right there.
Yeah,
Iconic
I went
image.
around taking pictures of West Tampa contemporary.
Sure.
That's a great
Because
idea.
here's the theme that I think you've been hitting on. There is a sense that a lot of our buildings, a lot of our culture, a lot of our history is being disappeared. And that's why I think that we're all so obsessed about hanging on and preserving this, because it's valuable.
Very much
It's
so.
so true.
Yeah.
We're hanging on by
it's
a
really
thread.
valuable culture.
It
So,
validates who we are currently.
Yeah.
If we don't acknowledge our abuelos and this wonderful history, then are we doing right by them?
Yeah.
We talk
and
about it
it's like
here.
the brave new world out here, you know. Everywhere north of Hillsborough Avenue to me is the brave new world.
I won't use the analogy that I always use with the two glasses of water, or the glass of water and the dark liquid, but that's what we say. You know, it's sort of being diluted. And as our northern neighbors continue to infiltrate our core, then not that there's anything wrong with that, to use a Seinfeld, but the truth be told, if I can use a Spanish saying, no le importa ni un pepín. You know, it's not important. Our history is not important to them because they grew up in Pittsburgh or in Chicago or in Philadelphia, so they're bringing that with them.
I would say, now I have to say, Latinos abandoned West Tampa, old West Tampa.
Well, we're coming back, Maura.
But the Yankees do have an appreciation for those red brick buildings because that's what they like.
Yeah.
That's what they grew up with up there.
I would say it's a
What they
little
used
a
to.
mix. It's a
Okay,
mix.
okay. And if the Tampa Native Show can play a small part in helping to create new emotional ties to our history, then we're doing our job. You know, we come to you each and every week here with love in our heart to try to remind everybody how important it is to keep our story alive. And if Maura being here with us, and when Joe Howden is here with us, you know, and everybody that comes and brings that passion
New stories.
to you, our viewers, then, and you get involved and excited, then we're doing our part.
And we're doing what we can to preserve the history. In fact, as Maura mentioned earlier, the micro-memory,
Yes.
in a little bit, we're going to be seeing one of those micro-memories on video.
And we don't have a lot of
And we
time
can't
left,
wait.
Stevie. And,
I know.
And it's a
I
good
have a
one.
micro moment right now.
Oh
that
my
I need
goodness,
to
a micro
announce.
moment. Espérate un momentito.
We only have 15 minutes left, and I just wanted to wish a very, very happy birthday to Mr. Mike Padrina, one of our biggest fans.
Big
He's
Mike.
in Orlando. So happy birthday,
Happy
Mike.
birthday.
And also Rosemary Durant
That's
is
right.
having her birthday
Another
today.
big fan
so
of ours as well. So happy birthday.
Birthday wishes
Happy
to
birthday.
To Michael, Big Mike, and Rose.
I saw that on
We
Facebook.
do that here on the Tampa Native Show too.
Birthdays?
We wish happy birthdays all the time. So, how long is that video? Because
It's
don't wanna
4
go-
minutes
All right,
long.
let's take our caller.
Okay.
We'll do our bolita drawing, and then we'll come back and we'll do our video, because our video, I think, is something. It's very-
incredible.
Yes, and it's very current, right?
It's
fun.
It's today.
Well, it's relevant to today.
Relevant to today. There's your spoiler alert. Relevant to today, and I mentioned it at the top of the show if you were
That's
listening. And we haven't even talked to Maura about how she feels about ending the embargo in Cuba. We know how she feels about it, but we want to talk a little bit more about that. Perhaps the next show will dedicate a goodly portion of that. So that's something that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts. And we know that there's opposition out there. We know that there's a strong feeling of we have to keep the status quo because it's working. Truth be told, Maura, and I think you agree with us, it's not really, is it?
What's working? That
The
hasn't
embargo.
worked.
Right?
Biggest failure in American U.S. relations with Latin America.
I think it's safe to say that...
That's another show.
They're exactly right. Caller, thank you for being patient. You're on the air with the Tampa Native Show. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey guys, David Benito calling.
Hey, David
David.
Benito, how are you?
Very well. How you guys doing tonight?
Thank
Good,
you for being
good, David.
patient with us while we were sitting there talking to Maura. Do you have a question or a comment?
Oh, no problem. Well, I believe first off that as far as Tampa goes, I'm in the last of a mixed family of babies. My mother was West Tampa, and my father grew up in Ybor City. My mother, I believe, grew up around Beach and St. Conrad.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always love to hear her tell stories of all the great stories of growing up in there. And she went to OLPH and all those. That's one of the great things that one of the things I really miss is all those stories she used to tell.
Sure.
And the little my memories of the little bodega on Cypress and I think Lincoln.
Cypress and
Oh,
Lincoln,
yeah.
of course, of course.
Oh, yeah?
So we used to go every year to get the Latron and the black beans.
Absolutely, Cypress Market, and we used to
Still
ride.
there.
Yeah, you could ride your bike there and the brick streets, and it was classic and traditional.
We still have bodegas in West Tampa.
Yes, and there will always be as long as West Tampa is West Tampa.
As well as if in Finnish, we have to sort of Spanish pronunciation there. West Tampa. So
Exactly.
Tampa.
Exactly. Did we get your Bolita number?
46.
46. Some things never change. Thank you, Davian. Appreciate you calling in.
Nice to hear
I'm
from
going
you.
to do my best to make it on Sunday too.
Great to hear from you. Thank you. We'll look
Thank you,
forward to
David.
seeing you there.
Definitely, if I don't make, I'm definitely interested in that.
We've got you.
Okay.
We've got you for that.
Bye, David.
Thank you, Davian.
Guys, thanks.
So we've got about 10 minutes to go, we've been told.
How long is the
The
video?
video's about 4 minutes long. I think we should probably do it now.
Let's do it
So
now.
on the back end, we can talk a little bit about the video and we can do our bolita drawing.
drawing,
Okay,
too.
real quick,
Let's do
ladies
that.
and gentlemen. Maura, thank you. Indulge us for just a minute, but you're going to want to see this video
Hey,
as well.
I want to give my bolita number.
And your
Hold on.
bolita number here. And you're going to draw the number tonight. So listen, Stevie, Florida State Fair.
Florida
It
State
started
Fair.
today.
Right.
What do you remember? Rides about the Midway. Rides on the
Oh, my
Midway.
God.
Go, you
Alpine.
name one.
The Alpine.
The Alpine?
Yeah, remember that?
I don't remember that.
I
See,
remember the
darling.
name. Tilt-A-Whirl was my
Wild
favorite.
Mouse. Maura?
The hot ladies called something hot.
Oh, the review.
Harlem Nights?
Harlem in
no.
Havana.
Harlem in Havana.
Review,
Stevie, another
yeah.
one.
Let me see. The Tilt-A-Whirl. You said
Tilt-A-Whirl?
that. Scrambler.
Scrambler, baby.
Double Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Bumper
The
cars.
Super. Himalaya.
Double Ferris wheel terrified me.
The Matterhorn. The Toboggan. The Skydiver. Okay, we'll leave it there.
The
because-
Wild
Parachutes?
Mouse.
You remember that?
There was some
The
parachutes.
Wild Mouse as well. Well,
Oh,
The
my
octopus.
gosh.
Steve recently found a video that he turned into a little compilation.
Right, right.
Circa 19,
Early
we wanna say about
60s.
63, 64, color, wonderful. And of course, the backdrop and the music is I Remember Tampa by Mike Beluga.
Mike Beluga.
We think you're going to enjoy this. So if Becky,
The
you're ready,
original State Fair site.
we want you to watch this. And if it doesn't bring
Yeah.
back memories, you need to turn your TV off now. But wait until you see it first. Enjoy.
I remember Tampa, the way she used to be, the places we would run to, the faces we would see. Yes, I remember Tampa, with precious memories, a city rising on the move, a simple yet progressive groove. Yes, I remember Tampa, she remembers me, walking through the park at night, beneath the moss-filled trees, children running, riding bike, footloose, fancy free. I remember Tampa, those sweet, soft memories, the city that I call my home, the home from which I never roam. Yes, I remember Tampa. She remembers me. I'm a Tampa native. Tampa native, can't you see? I will share my story with you to preserve its history. I remember. I remember. I remember. Oh, this love affair was bound to grow. It's endless behind that, don't you know? I remember Tampa. She remembers me. Tampa native. Tampa native through and through. Seen a lot of things go down here. Some things I never knew. Yeah, I never knew. Some things I never knew. I was clueless. You know, really is. No. You don't go yet. That's right. I've touched the truth. It is it. Remember, this guy, you know, he was Los Angeles. This guy knows everything. Bueno, it's sit there and talk to you for hours and hours. Right now, and now it feels siempre well then. Come on, that's exciting. Come on, so you know you want it's something like this. She's like, what is it? He's not even he's walking inside the people in West Tampa. Back when we were younger, and everything seemed new. We used used to have a lot of fun, yes we did, no matter what we do. Sleeping days, long summer nights, going anywhere we pleased. This love I've always called my own, a love that I've always known, the city that I call my home, the home from which I never roamed. This love affair was meant to be. Oh, I love her and she loves me. Yes, I remember Tampa. She remembers me.
Oh, that's great.
Well, if
That's wonderful.
if that didn't
Take you
and if
back.
you can bring the sound down in the studio, if that didn't just immerse you back in that wonderful time, well, we'll show it again to you. It'll be up on our website. Listen, we were just told in our earpieces that we have 3 minutes to
can't
go,
believe it.
and it's amazing that we only have 3 minutes to go in the show. We
usually
feel like
how
we
it
have a little
works.
bit longer. Are you sure, Beck? You're absolutely sure? Okay, because we don't want to cut out too early and then all of a sudden have a big black. Okay. Listen, I just do this part of the thing, okay?
Right.
Becky does that part
She
over
does
there.
that part.
And we're going to show the booth in just a minute too. So Beck, do not let me go over now. Maura, give us your bolita number.
Número 6.
6, lucky number 6, because somebody is going to win this amazing Tampa Natives 50th anniversary business shirt with those businesses on the back of the shirt. And listen, this is Steve combed cotton.
It's comb cotton.
Huh? Softest
and-
shirt
and
you'll
it's
ever
very
wear?
The only
soft.
place you can get it is right here.
Right here, because we're the only ones that have it. Okay, Maura, reach in here. Thank you to all of our callers tonight. And we know most of you were sitting at home listening tonight and didn't want to interrupt. And we appreciate you being there and listening. We got 1 minute to go.
1
Oh, my
minute.
goodness. Have mercy.
I think somebody said that number.
The number, oh, wow. Jim Hooper, number 58 on
Wait
the
a minute.
money.
Let's double check. Let's
Who?
double check.
You don't have to double check. That's number 58.
Number
That's all he
58,
ever plays.
Jim
I
Hooper.
remember that.
Maura, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before? we
Yeah,
say
one
goodnight?
more thing.
And real quick.
One more thing. Forget Starbucks. We have the best café con leche, which is a lot cheaper in West Tampa.
Hey, good point.
West
All right.
Tampa,
Great
West
point.
Tampa sandwich shop. Quick shot of the booth. Quick shot of the booth before we get out of here, Becky. Quick shot of the booth. Wave everybody. There's hello Dory. There's Becky. There's Damian. And there's Autria. Shot of the booth before we go? No? Maybe? There it
There
is.
it
Now
is.
wave. Now wave. Hello everybody. And of course Nick is on camera. Nick Nunez, thank you again, Papa, for being here and working the
Yes,
cameras
thank you,
for us.
baby.
Beck, how much time we have? On behalf of
my
the Tampa Native Show, I'm Mario Nunez. Salud and happy days. We love you, Tampa.
Yes,
See you next week.
See you next week. Wow, that was quick. I hope that we got out of time.
Back when we were younger and everything seemed new, we used to have a lot of fun, yes we did, no matter what we do. Sleepy days, long summer nights, going anywhere we please, with love that I could call my own, love that I've always known, the city that I call my home, a home from which I never roam. This love affair was meant to be. I love her and she loves me. I remember Tampa, oh, she remembers me. She remembers me. I remember, yeah, yes I do. Oh, I remember, yeah, me and you. I'm a Tampa native, Tampa native, can't you see? I will share my story with you to preserve its history.
All right now, don't forget, Thursdays, 7 p.m. on TBCN, home of the Tampa Native Show.